Welcome everyone again. Thank you for joining our Wednesday news series where we hear from social entrepreneurs and their teams from around the world about timely topics and solutions. My name is Kenny Cluett. I have the privilege of leading Ashoka's Hello World, which is our global initiative around migration and people on the move. And today, for the next 30 minutes, we'll have the privilege of hearing from Myroslava Keryk, Ashoka Fellow from Ukraine, who's working on this topic of activating migrants and people on the move as changemakers. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, we love hearing from you as we move along. So please feel free to drop your questions, your Q&As, anything you're thinking of at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we'll try to get to as many of them as we can in the second half of this conversation. But now, without further ado, let me briefly introduce today's guest. Myroslava is originally from Ukraine, and she's been living in Poland since 2002. In 2004, she was in Poland, connected to the Orange Revolution. She started organizing initiatives to support Ukrainians and other people on the move to demonstrate for and work towards democracy in different ways. Then she created our Choice Foundation, which today is now known as the Ukrainian House. Mira has also worked in the academia and done a number of other things, but eventually dropped these to go full-time into her work with the Ukraine House. She's a recognized leader and social entrepreneur in Poland and across the Ukrainian diaspora, and a natural innovator at heart. Mira, thank you so much for being here and welcome. Let me go ahead and start by asking you a question so that we all have a bit of a full understanding of the context we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Tell us a bit. I mean, we've all heard about Ukraine and all kinds of stuff in the news. We've seen different things. We've seen some stuff from Poland and how they're reacting to this, but what is the context you're working in? What does Poland look like? What is the Ukrainian diaspora, and how has that shifted over the past years?
Mm-hmm. Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to be today, and I really thank you for the invitation. About the context, if you talk about Ukrainians who live in Poland and with whom we started to work, so in 2004, there was not so many, but before the full-scale invasion, we can say that in Poland was approximately 1.5 million of Ukrainian migrants. There's also a Ukrainian minority. So these are people who were born and lived in Poland because of the shifting borders. So they're part of the Poland. There were also Ukrainians who live. So there were around 50,000. And with the full-scale invasion, we had a few millions people who crossed the border with Poland. Partially, the first few months, they were staying partially in Poland, but also they went further to west. At some point, like in June last year, they started also to come back to Ukraine, especially those who coming from the west part of Ukraine or even central Ukraine. Unfortunately, also even from the cities which are under shelling. So, but it's kind of, people feel homesick for the family members. So nowadays it's really estimated because it's difficult to have these clear numbers, but approximately 1 million of Ukrainians have this ID number entitled for Ukrainian who are under temporary protection. And we can say that is 1.2 million, those who are Ukrainian migrants. So the Ukrainian community as a such, it's probably more than 2 million people. Of course, they live in bigger cities, so Warsaw and surrounding region, it's one main region where people come. Also big cities like Wrocław, Krakow and others, because they tend to be in the community, to have somebody whom they can support or find support. Also there are organizations or institutions that support. There is a job market. But the other thing is the problem is with the housing, because these cities are overcrowded and often the people have to share the apartments, or they also, unfortunately, some of them, those most vulnerable, stay in the collective shelters.
Excellent. So essentially over the last year,
maybe my one more thing to add. Of course, majority of those people who came after 24th, these are women with kids. So it's a majority, and majority also of them are find employment, but unfortunately below qualifications because they are waiting to return home. They are in this on hold, their life on hold. So they support the family, but still they're waiting to return to their life because majority also of them are highly qualified.
Got it. Got it. But to put it in dimension too, I think you've said that about the population of Ukrainians in Poland that are actually living there and consider it their home now has doubled essentially over the past year, which is just a small amount of people. But well, before we get into your work, because you started kind of talking about some of the aspects of this, I wanted to hear a bit of your story, because we're talking about migrants, we're talking about people on the move and how resilience is built and change making. Tell us just a bit about your story. You've been a migrant into Poland. You started becoming active and working on people. What was that transformation like? Like what were the moments when you kind of started exercising change making in your new context?
Well, I came to Poland in 2002. I came for PhD studies. So it was in a way kind of easy track, not comparing to others who started to come to Poland as a labor migrants. And that time, these were kind of, let's say, typical migrant jobs. This was agriculture, housekeeping, also some of the enterprise, some of the companies, but still it was mainly kind of just these low-skilled jobs. And but I came as a PhD student, so it was easier for me to also to build a network which can support me or can support my activities. And then in 2 years, the Orange Revolution happened in Ukraine, and my example is kind of typical for the activity of Ukrainians abroad. It's very much connected to what is happening in the home country. I am this generation of Orange Revolution, when the former president wanted to falsify elections, and then people opposed, and actually we won. And then so there are a few organizations that started to work all over the world, Ukrainian ones. So we at that time understood that it's very important to be useful, that it's not only for yourself, but it's important to do something which is also useful for others. And that's from that time, I couldn't just do my academic career. I felt it's kind of not enough. And not only my personal goals, but also like the others who exist, who started to be active, it's after the Revolution of Dignity, so to 2014, because also for them it was a change-making event. So then also, and few of the organizations, not only few, they they're active till nowadays. And nowadays it's also the boom of the civic activization of Ukrainians abroad, not only abroad, of course, in Ukraine as well, but just in terms of being abroad as a migrant. So these are kind of one of the decision-making events and life-changing events for Ukrainians. So for me as well, and since 2004, I started to be active, and then together with a group of Ukrainians and Poles, we established the NGO, and we started to help migrants. And then it developed, we established Ukrainian House as a place, as a community center. And now we decided that we need to change the name, because people become much known as the Ukrainian House Foundation of a choice. So there was a choice to change the name.
Yeah. So you've said a couple things already that I think are really interesting to explore. And as we talk about this topic, right, of how migrants or people on the move kind of are activated as change makers or wanting to help others, going from one aspect to another. And you mentioned a couple of things. You said, there was this moment that, in this case, the Orange Revolution or the Revolution of Dignity, that people got excited about something, and you felt, especially from afar, you wanted to do something to help people at home, and you started realizing, I want to do something to help others, not just myself. Tell me a bit about what you're seeing now with different migrants and refugees and other people coming, how they're shifting, or quickly becoming or engaging kind of in what we would call this change-making skills. What are some of the patterns you've seen, or some of the stories you've seen of how people switch and how you're helping them do that?
So there is still a group of Ukrainians who are kind of this from time to time active because of let's say now we have a war in Ukraine, so they're active in the collecting of some goods or money to support Ukraine. And this is, let's say, part-time, and only kind of how it's not so being active in the organization, but still they form small groups, and they feel that it's very useful, and they do even some basic things like, I don't know, doing this candles for the people who are in the when they don't have heating. So these are candles who heat, and you can do it at home as well. So they are kind of feel that at least some partially they need to be very, very helpful to Ukraine, and they need kind of responsibility to that. So, and I think there is a huge also in Ukraine the movement of the people, volunteers who form organizations, and even like if there are research whom you trust most, they are like NGOs and volunteers are those on the top. So kind of it's also shifted in Ukraine the trust in those who are civically active, people who are civically active. So also we have group of people who came who were running or who were part of the civic organizations in Ukraine. So coming here, they have this knowledge. They were practically activists, so they want to be active here. They lack network. This is what actually is the challenge for them. For me, I was building this network many years, and we are kind of as an organization, we're building network many years. But for them they know what to do, how to help themselves, but they don't have the network to whom to come and how to organize. So it's a language barrier, it's a legal, let's say, framework is a barrier. Also, this network as language is a barrier, so to get the network also is a barrier. And also there is different situation, political situation and willingness or not will. There is no willingness sometimes to cooperate. There's also kind of feeling that, well, we don't know those people who came, and there is a bit lack of trust in those newcomers to be kind of part of the organization. So, but also we have cases like recently I met one lady. She is a mother of a child with disability, and she said that when you have such child, when it is born, you immediately become a civic activist, because it's kind of you cannot rely on the state. You need to fight for the rights to support to your child. And that's immediately like all mothers with children with disabilities are civic activists. And she is really active actually in other cities than Warsaw and in Krakow, and they form some group of to support each other, and also to look for the special treatment for the kids with disabilities. So I think there are those who kind of have the necessity to be active, but also there are those who bring organizations with them. So for instance, we have also many NGOs who are running in Ukraine, or they were active in Ukraine, and they registered them here, and they try to also to build the program, support programs. So I think we can say that this war and these political events motivate people to be, they want to be useful. They think that it's their oblige also to Ukrainian army, especially, that they need to work, not only supporting army, but even supporting the people, refugees, or supporting also Ukrainians organizations or the other groups in Ukraine. They do this kind of being in the back of the Ukraine and supporting Ukraine. So this is.
I want to point out to three things you've said that as I'm seeing this, because and to one other aspect, you've said, as migrants or people on the move, in this case, the majority of Ukrainians are activating as change makers. There's kind of three things you've mentioned. One, they come from a change making background. So there's people that already had their civic organizations, they get to a new context, and they don't necessarily want to be helped. They just want, give me the network so I can get working, right? You also talked about people who, came over for whatever, are living in Poland and seeing the situation back home, saying, how can I help? Well, I can make candles, I can make whatever, but like activated by seeing the need. And then you talked about other people who are faced with, impossible circumstances, like having, a child with disabilities in the midst of this circumstance, who kind of are activated by a personal need that they have to solve. And one thing I want to point out that's so different talking to you than to many other people in the sphere of migration is you're assuming from the get-go that just about anyone who's migrating can be and should be a change maker. You're not saying, well,
like this.
But it's really interesting, right? Because, and something else we're announcing today, we're actually launching, and you know this, Miro, the paper we just wrote from the migration initiative in Ashoka Hello World, paper we called People on the Move. And as we talk about what framework change needs to happen, the primary framework change that we've identified is to stop seeing migrants and people on the move as passive subjects of pity or compassion. in the best case scenario, and see them as change makers, willing to contribute, wanting to contribute. So rather than thinking, how do I help these poor people? It's thinking, how do I lower barriers as quickly as possible so they can get engaged in doing what they want to do, which is to help others. And maybe to throw that back to you, because I think your work is fundamental doing this. What are some things you're doing from your organization that's lowering those barriers or helping people to kind of self-identify as change makers and get involved?
Well, we have many kind of ideas and projects, but maybe I say about two things. One, for instance, we have women clubs. And we started it from 2014 that we kind of supported women to find friends, to be able to have kind of some support group, but also to have some trainings, workshops on the working in group and project writing and job applications and many issues, like to support them to find themselves in new circumstances. This was directed to the, let's say, migrant women, and one group, this was elderly women who work in the housekeeping and domestic care, but the other was a group, these were women who were coming to Poland with their husbands, let's say like this. They had high qualifications, but unfortunately in such professions that it's very difficult to find job in Polish labor market. So that for them it was difficult to kind of, if you are Ukrainian language teacher, it's hard to find job in Poland, or you are editor on the Ukrainian language editor. So that's this kind of thing. Nowadays we also have this, after 24th of February, we decided to develop these clubs, and now these are clubs for Ukrainian refugee women. And it was interesting how kind of providing this space, support space, psychological support, trainings, and also different workshops, starting from, I don't know, working embroidery, or, I don't know, doing some handiworks. But then kind of we made for those who want to be active, who want to help themselves to become kind of visible, to show themselves. And nowadays our women's clubs are run by the refugee women, and they organize the process, they monitor, they create programs. So kind of helping, supporting them. It's also allows us to find those who want to be much more active, and it's very good, very important to have this. Give the floor to those who want to be much more active than kind of just participating, or at that time they participate, but then it comes time they want to be much to contribute. So this was great, and we have few women who are really great, strong, and they strong because also they had this support group. The other what we do now, and it's actually I think maybe what Ashoka also does to connect in also different institutions. And for instance, we developing the network of in Mazovian region. So it's a region around Warsaw, where we want to connect the public institutions with Ukrainian activists. So to find those activists, to introduce them to the public institution, and to show how beneficiary it could be for both, like libraries, culture centers, or local administration, to have these activists on board. How it could be beneficiary for the, let's say, social inclusion and social kind of cohesion of their community. To have them on board, because they are also part of the community and also to think about their smaller communities, because it's a smaller localities that they're usually mono-ethnic, and they don't have such a change as Warsaw has, or big cities where you have many cultures. It is not anymore like monocultural cities, but in the smaller localities it's a rather monoculture, mono-ethnic cities. How to show how beneficiary they can be from having those people, from involving them in different processes, and not only kind of, for migrants, but also have beneficiary to develop the policies in this locality. So this what we do, and now it seems that we started in spring, and now we have few localities where it started to grow, and we see kind of positive initiatives, and we hope also to develop it further to support other, like also Ukrainian initiatives. there may be third thing what we do. Sorry, I promised to say two. The third, we also have we started like 2 years ago the coalition of migrant and minority organizations, and that's the idea to have those initiatives, not only Ukrainian one, but just to create the coalition, to create the network, to support those smaller ones, to make them much stronger, to look also for the grants and also the projects that could make them stronger and to connect them, because then they feel stronger, they can share experiences, we all the time, like what I said previously, that those especially new groups, new initiatives, they don't have such a big network, and it's very important to provide them with network, to give them, to help them where we can help, where we have a knowledge and where we know how to navigate in this Polish reality.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. And again, I'm gonna throw back at you some stuff you've said, because it's just so important. Like you've talked about, how activating them involves connecting, listening to their needs, and solving them in groups. I love that approach. Or okay, 4 or 5 of you need this. Let's get together as a group and let you run with it, right? Pathways from participant to giver to active participant, where you're making those pathways very clear. And also outwardly, right? Convincing the institutions and those in power about the importance of having them on board. And then I love this last thing you talked about, the minorities, right? People that are kind of in smaller groups that are often excluded from help that's kind of directly linked to others. Mm-hmm. How do we get them in the system and involved? There's something else I know that you do, which is kind of, or the way you think about this, these questions, right? That you ask of, like, where am I, or who am I, where am I, how do I give back, or what's the mission? Could you talk just a little bit about that, of kind of what's I guess it's the philosophy behind this and what questions you're asking people that come, right?
Mm-hmm. Actually, it's very difficult. I know that I was thinking about it, but I think the people, if people come to us, we rather don't ask them who are they, where they are, but we rather want them to find it themselves and then to lead them where they want to go. So in a way, that's, they are in Poland, they have, especially those refugees, they have life interrupted, and we want them to get this life back. And to be, so far they are in Poland and they need to find their life here and then start to build again a new life, because otherwise they don't know, for many of them, they don't know what to do, where to go, whether they will stay in Poland or they will go farther or they will return. And for us it's important, you are here, you need to use as much, you need to kind of use and as much as possible from the situation. So if you have these possibilities to attend the courses or to be in our team, so please do it, and then you will see, not to be stressed even more because you need to take decision. For many of them it's very difficult because the families are in Ukraine or the cities where they live, they are occupied, and they don't know how their life will go on. And it's kind of I am here, I need to think about now. And also, of course, it's good to plan, but in some kind of, when you have this idea that you wait for the victory, it's very difficult to ask people to have some plans. So that's kind of, we have this approach, we help them regardless of the decisions they make and the situation in which they are. We want just them to be stronger. To be stronger, to recover from the traumas, and to know, kind of, to take their lives in their hands.
Yeah, you're saying something so important, Mira. I work in the field of migration, constantly talking to people and stuff. And one of the questions I get often from a lot of people is, okay, it's great to talk about, people on the move as change makers, but when people are facing trauma, when they're coming from such a difficult situation, how do you switch that over? And you're saying something here that's really deep. I think it may be helpful even to go a little deeper about how when people come, like your aim as the organization, how you're training your staff, etc., is to try to get them involved doing something as quickly as possible, and understanding that if they contribute here, they're going to be happier, in a sense, right? That seems to be, and as people listening here, many of them work with organizations. I'm pretty sure every single person that's listening to us today has a friend who's a migrant or a person on the move or a refugee who's gone through a difficult situation, they've seen them and they've wondered, what can I do? What are some of the things I can ask this person, not to paternalize them, you know, and tell them, here's what you should do, let me help you, but really to help them recover the power that so often seems to be threatened. What would be some, you know, pieces of advice there, or questions we should ask, or things we should be thinking, or who should we connect them to? I know this is a very broad question, but I know it's your day-to-day question as well, right? That you work with.
Well, I think what I said, that's for many of them, of course, there is also not everyone who should be the activist or something. They can work in there, they have the different passes, but it's important to give the dignity to be subject, not object. So it's I think this is and also to respect what they want, and to be a kind of mainstream and not only on the margins. Because recently I thought about this, and I also heard some talk that often we are kind of migrant, it's a minority, we are on margins, but we need to be in the text, not of the book, not in on the margins of the book. So I think this is also important to ask in different aspects, not only as box migrants, box refugees, but actually you have the issues, I don't know, of the roads in the city, and you discuss also, because migrants also using these roads or contributing to by taxes to these roads, and kind of also on many different issues. So to be involved, to think about it as a part of the community, and this is very important. And not only kind of those whom you have to teach. And also it was what I also hear. I didn't have these experiences because I came to Poland knowing language. But if you come to other country, even having high qualifications, high education, you don't know language on this level, and somehow you feel as a child, and people treat you as a child. So in a way, kind of, because you don't know language, so it's paternalizing. So I think this is very important to know, that this is often the language. It's the time the people can contribute. Just they need to kind of to get this knowledge to be, and they need to be a part of our community.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Like finding the pieces that affect us all. We're nearing time. There's been a few questions, but I'm going to bring a couple together. And here's the question, and maybe we can even answer it back to back. Like, it seems to be, you know, when we think not just of migrants themselves, but also the society around them and the resistance points, that we need to shift the narrative, right, around migrants, around how they see it. What are some of the keys that you're seeing in shifting that narrative? Both, we've talked a lot about, I think, migrants themselves and people on the move, how shifting their own narrative. Are there some other aspects that you're working on shifting the narrative widely? And what are some key aspects?
Well, nowadays we mainly work, let's say, as a humanitarian organization, because we provide support to refugees. And I think what I noticed, it's actually for us, it's a new, because previously till the 24th of February last year, we were working with migrants. So it was different group. It was those who decided to come, and or they were push factors, of course, but still there was some decision behind. But in this situation, they needed to run, and there was different also emotional state. And now I forgot what I wanted to say. I know. And I think what we kind of learned by doing, it's also in this generally humanitarian approach, is that we provide holistic support, that it's not only refugees or migrants, especially in this emergency support, it's not only giving them food, water, I don't know, clothes, accommodation, but just they need also access to culture. And the culture, it's a huge instrument to make people recover from traumas, to make people feel stronger. And I feel like in this case we have is our library. We had a line of people who wanted to find accommodation, and just we were giving them some food and looking for accommodation, but they also said we need books, because we didn't take books from home. And immediately we opened the library, and it's now we have like, I don't know, 700 regular people who regularly read and borrow books. And I think this is also a kind of this approach, that it's not only those who need support, basic needs, but just also culture is important if you provide people the access to culture and participate in culture.
Thank you so much. we're right at time. So thank you so much, Mira, for this conversation. I think there's so much more to explore. We could go on for hours, of course. Before I wrap up, just to mention to all, as we talk about these principles or ideas or insights around narrative shift, that is kind of one of the primary purpose of the paper we're releasing today, People on the Move. The link is in the chat. It's free to download if you want to download it. It's a compendium kind of over 50 interviews with people like Mira and other key leaders around the world thinking of what is the narrative shift and the framework shift around migration. So please feel free to download that, to ask us more questions. Last thing I'll say is for all who are listening, please look out for a follow-up email with a link to today's recording and highlights to browse and share. We really hope you'll join us next time. Welcome Change is a weekly series about the future we want to live and the role we can all play in it. You can sign up in the link using this chat. Thank you all so much and see you again next Wednesday for Welcome Change. Thank you, Mira.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.